Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Kelly, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications for SBAM. And I want to welcome Verge.io, one of SBAM's newest VIP memberships. And the overarching vision of Verge.io is to create an autonomous infrastructure. And this entails leveraging cutting edge technologies such as AI and automation to create self-managing and self-optimizing IT infrastructure. So pretty topical and interesting new business. So welcome to Verge.io. All right, Brian, let's get started today with an update on SBAM's legal action surrounding the Corporate Transparency Act. What happened in court on Friday?
Yeah, we actually were in court on Friday for the first step. So there was a motion that we were asking for an injunction and a temporary injunction or preliminary injunction. And basically what this would do is it would be an order that says that the government couldn't enforce on the injunction while the case is working its way through the system. And unfortunately, we did not get a preliminary injunction. Wasn't terribly surprised by that because you have to make two different criteria. First is the judge has to make a determination based on fairly limited information that you're likely to win. The judge actually did not weigh in on that, but said that the other thing that he didn't believe that that there would be irreparable damage. That's the other standard, that you get a preliminary injunction when there's irreparable damage if he doesn't issue the injunction. And he just determined that since most businesses don't have to file till the end of the year, that that this case is likely to be resolved before then, and therefore it didn't even have to get to the merits of the case to say there's not a irreparable harm case that's made. Now, if you did form a business yet this year, you only have 90 days to file, and that was acknowledged, but just determined it wasn't irreparable damage in the meantime to let this case play out. So let's get into the meat of the case, the actual merits. We had made arguments. The government side made arguments. We responded to those arguments, and then there was this hearing on Friday. And the judge actually seemed quite interested in our Fourth Amendment argument. So remember that we argued based on three things. We said we don't believe the government had the enumerated powers. We said that the vagueness of the act is a violation of the Fifth Amendment, but also illegal search and seizure, that the Fourth Amendment, it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. As I had said in previous briefings, I felt that the Fourth Amendment argument was the strongest, and it's definitely the one that the judge zeroed in on. So the question is this even a search, is providing this information? Is it even a Fourth Amendment issue in the first place, whether it's a violation or not? But is it a Fourth Amendment issue? And really, I believe that the way that line of questioning went, that it is very clear that this is definitely in the Fourth Amendment realm, or at least that was the way that the questioning took the conversation. And so while I would have loved to have gotten the preliminary injunction, I felt really good about our arguments being taken to heart, taken very, very seriously through the process. So at the end of the day, I would like to have had this preliminary injunction, just the opening motion in a long process that we will see through likely all the way to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, the arguments themselves, I think that we're onto something here.
All right, you just referenced a long process. So what is the next step in this process?
Yeah, what I had imagined was getting to the Court of Appeals as quickly as possible. And so that if you had asked me this question a few weeks ago, I'd have said, well, if we don't get the preliminary injunction, we'll just appeal the preliminary injunction decision immediately to the Court of Appeals. However, the judge has indicated that that this is a case that could be moved along quite quickly, and at this original jurisdiction level. So we will file a summary judgment motion by May 31st. The government then will have about 30 days to respond. And then our reply to that response as plaintiffs will be due by July 12th. And then we would expect that really by the end of July, we might get a decision. Now, this one wouldn't be this preliminary injunction decision. It would be a decision on the merits of the case. Does the Corporate Transparency Act violate the Fourth Amendment? So that act or Fifth Amendment or enumerated powers, but again, the Fourth Amendment, I think, was the one that really this judge zeroed in on, the one that I felt was the strongest part of the argument. So really that puts it into like mid summer when we get a decision. Now that won't be the end of it. No, we know that whether if we win, the government will appeal to the Court of Appeals, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And if they win, we'll appeal to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So this is just the first step along the way, but the fact that the judge has indicated an interest in taking this up quickly, and I don't know if those dates I gave you sounded quick or not, but in the court system, that's pretty quick. And so we will proceed accordingly, and hopefully we'll have a decision on the merits to get a favorable decision on the merits by midsummer.
All right, well, thanks for the update, and we'll keep everybody posted as we know more. So Brian, it felt like last year we covered bank failures kind of frequently for a while. And it's been, I haven't had that in the news much lately, but there's been another bank failure. Is there room for concern here?
Yeah, this was there was a state regulator in Pennsylvania, so not the federal FDIC. There are federal banking regulators, and then there are state banking regulators, because you have state chartered banks and nationally chartered banks. And there was the state regulators in Pennsylvania have taken control of a bank called Republic First. Not to be confused with what you might see around Michigan sometimes. First Republic, different bank, similar sounding name. Republic First, seizure by state regulators. And it's the first one that has happened, bank takeover that has happened since spring of 2023, when there was a lot of concern, 3 bank failures. But this bank is a lot smaller than those others. So it's about $6 billion in assets. Now I'm from the little town of Portland. 6 billion still sounds like a lot to me, but in banking terms, just as a comparison, the 3 bank failures that happened last year, you might remember in New York, there was Signature Bank. Signature Bank had 110 billion in assets. This one was 6 billion. And then First Republic from last year, 233 billion, and then let's see, what was the other? Oh, Silicon Valley, of course, the one started it all, at 209 billion. So much smaller than and not likely to have the same type of like national ramifications. I read a little bit up on this bank, and it sounded like they had some issues, even confidence in their financial statements and things. So it was I don't see this really turning into the type of banking scare that we had a year ago.
All right, well, that's good. On Thursday's show, we covered two pieces of news, one on overtime thresholds and the other on non-compete agreements. And I just want you to give everybody a little reminder on those two news stories, and I'll share the links here in the chat as well.
Yeah, we do have some good articles that are that could be resources for this, but the big one, the one that I think will affect more businesses is the Fair Labor Standards Act change in the overtime thresholds. So there are certain thresholds. So every employee, no matter what their responsibilities, whether administrative or managerial or salary or not, every single employee that has $35,568 in income per year or more, or less, I mean, it gets overtime. That threshold will be increased on July 1st to $43,888. So the overtime threshold, anybody under 43,888 as of July 1st will be entitled to overtime, regardless of if they're salary or not, regardless of whether they have managerial responsibilities or not. And then on January 1st, 2025, the amount will be increased to $58,656. So very substantial increase in the overtime threshold. So if you have people that are salaried and have administrative or managerial style jobs that fall under those thresholds, they will be entitled to overtime. You'll have to keep track of it going forward. And pay accordingly. Or at least once these dates hit, July 1st, December or January 1st of 2025. Number two was the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, banned non-competes. So very, very broad ban of non-competes. And they don't make really any exceptions at all for any new arrangements. And they allowed for existing non-competes to be grandfathered in for just a very small percentage. It's estimated to be about 1% of non-compete agreements will fall under this exemption. And it's for people that are both in a policy-making decision role and have an income at greater than $151,164. So those are the thresholds, and or that's the threshold to be grandfathered in. So you have a non-compete and you're over that amount, then those are grandfathered in. Everybody, literally everybody else, those provisions become non-enforceable, and they'll kick in about 4 months.
All right, thanks for the recap there. We want to make sure everybody is aware of these new rules. Okay, so it's been a little while since we've had a Data Monday report, and that's what we have next for you.
All right, let's look at our Data Monday report, which is kind of a catch up, if you will, for several things that just because I missed several Mondays this last month, other things that where Kelly was filling in. But the first is inflation. So we talked a little bit about inflation in one of our briefings, and coming in here at 3.8% in terms of the in terms of the core inflation, and then overall inflation at 3.5%. This was definitely a disappointment. It came in higher than what it was expected. It really does seem to be stuck in this area. The core inflation has now for several months in a row has exceeded the top line inflation, and it's a real concern for policymakers that had hoped by June to be lowering interest rates, and that hope has been evaporating since these numbers came out last month. Here's a bit of I'll say good news, although it's not new. It's been for a little while here. You'll see labor force participation among the prime working ages, 25 to 54, are it's higher than pre-pandemic levels. So it really had been on the climb. It was severely interrupted by the pandemic, but now it's gotten back up to and exceeds. If you look at overall labor force participation, so those under 25 and those over 55 added into these numbers, you'd see that that actually overall population wise, it has not quite gotten back to pre-pandemic levels. But this is really in the labor force numbers, even though it was down just a tad last month, looking actually pretty strong, solid. The only the downside here is that in Michigan, our population among this group of people is shrinking. So the higher percentage are working, but there's fewer of them. The pie has just shrunk. Looking at the jobs report, you'll see, coming in at over 300,000 in March. Government and education were actually led the way again in this month. So the overall jobs number pretty strong. Unfortunately, the leading sectors were not private sector. And then looking at GDP, the top line, it doesn't necessarily that's just kind of overall. You can see the pandemic dip there, but I think that the bar chart at the bottom of this graph really gives you a little bit more insight into what's been happening. So this is the annualized number, and it did definitely come in lower at 1.6. So you take the quarterly activity times 4, equals 1.6. And as you can see, that has been declining back to where it was back about 3 quarters ago. And this is, it's one of those things where it's kind of mixed. On the one hand, it's like, well, maybe this means that inflation is going to go down more in the future, but it also could point to recession eventually. And then for the final slide, just wanted to share the GDP, where it comes from, and consumer spending is most of it. You'll see, and then you'll see government spending coming in at 17.1, and then fixed investment at 17.9. So that's just breaking out of that GDP. Where is it coming from? Not a surprise. Most of it consumer spending. If you look at the quarters before that, you'll see that it had been higher. GDP in the last 3 quarters was higher, but the one thing that really caught my eye though on this is the one that's negative. So net exports of goods and services. So basically you see that exports and the import overall, we were net losers in the export import game when it comes to GDP. So that is the data Monday today. No big surprises in there. A nice summary of the data that came out last week, but unfortunately for those who have borrowings and variable interest rates, those are probably gonna be with you a little longer than what would have been expected just a few months ago.
All right, well, thanks for the update and report. Brian, we're going to be at Oakland University on May 1st. This is one of our upcoming owner-to-owner events. It's actually at the home of the university president. Do you want to say a few words about that event?
Yeah, we'd love to have our Oakland County members, or from anywhere else if you want to head in there. So we had this great event at a few months ago in the University of Michigan, and the president of the University of Michigan had opened up the university president's home to host our members, and it went over really well. And then when we had already planned to do something over at Oakland University, and they've now opened up the president's home for that as well. So very, very, I don't know if people have ever been to Oakland University, but it is a beautiful campus. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of trustees there. Have been now for almost 6 years. 5.5 years. And that's it's just such a beautiful campus. And so it's a nice opportunity to maybe see something that you've never seen before. We've got a great crew out in Oakland County. If you've never been to one of our owner-to-owner events, please do check it out. These are just for the owner of the business. So it's different than sometimes you go to these mixers like chamber mixers or something, and it's just a bunch of salespeople, and it's not fun for anybody. At SBAM, our events just for the owners. And so you'll spend time with other people who also own businesses, and cool stuff happens when we put business owners together, especially in great settings like at OU.
All right, thanks for adding a little color to that. The details for the event are on our website. We also have a webinar on May 1st on behavioral health strategies. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so If you like some tools for yourself and for your employees, you can check that out, check that webinar out as well. And there's a couple other things happening in May and into June, so hope to see you at something here in the future. That is all we have for you today, but we'll be back here Thursday at 3 p.m.
See you on Thursday, everybody.